This video will show you how to replace a valve cover with gasket on a Mazda 3 with a 2.0 engine. This will be located across the top of your engine. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Let's remove the upper engine cover first. This is going to be fairly simple. Take hold of it and lift it straight up. We'll set that aside. Now that we have that cover off of there, I always like to try to clean as much debris from along the top of the engine as possible so nothing falls inside of the engine, which could be catastrophic to the engine itself. I'm just going to use some compressed air. We're going to make our way along the passenger side top of the valve cover and start dislodging our wiring harnesses. This wiring harness has a few mounting points making its way across. We want to dislodge all three of these points. Now, as far as the mounting points, there is small locking tabs that you should be able to grab onto using some angled needle nose pliers. Generally after that, you should be able to pry this up. Just going under here, it's very difficult to see under there. Just gotta try to get under this. Okay, there's that one. Continue on to the next one over here. If you don't have angled pliers to be able to do this, you could just gently pry. Be careful not to cause any damage. Now, as you can tell, we do have our slack, but we want a little more, so we can go ahead and pull this aside for the valve cover removal, so we're making our way along the back side. For this one down here, it's fairly difficult to get your pliers in and hold anything, so I'm just going to pry it out of place. For the electrical connector on the VVT solenoid, we have a locking tab. You just want to go ahead and squeeze that down. You can see it lifting on the opposite end. Just a quick inspection for corrosion. You can set that aside. Continuing on, we have our ignition coils making their way across. Disconnect each one of the electrical connectors. Now there's a locking tab up along the top of the connector. You should press that down. If you need to, you could gently pry. I'm using a small pocket screwdriver for this. You can see our locking tab deep inside there. No corrosion. Let's continue on, same process for all others. Let's make our way right down in this area here. We'll pry that out of place as well. We can see some locking tabs along the backside. You could squeeze those. Let's continue on to removing our ignition coils. You can tell that I've marked them so I know exactly where they go during the reinstallation process. To remove your ignition coil, you're going to remove the mounting hardware using an 8mm. We'll give it a slight wiggle, lift it up and out of position. As you remove your ignition coils, make sure they're not cracked or damaged in any way. We'll remove the engine oil dipstick from this area. When you do remove this, just make sure nothing falls inside of the engine as you continue on here. Give that a quick wipe. Set that aside. Over towards the driver's side upper portion of the valve cover, we have our vent hose here. We're going to pull that out of place. If it is stuck onto the valve cover, you could gently twist, or you might have to break it free using an angled pick of some sort. Now once you have that off there, you want to give it a quick squeeze. Make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged. We'll set that aside. Now we're focusing on this area here. We're going to dislodge this from its mounting bracket. Now as far as this plastic clip, we do have some locking tabs on the driver's side of the bracket, so I'm squeezing this with some pliers and we'll pry it out of place. In this area, we have a small hose clamp. I'm going to squeeze that using my pliers. Now I've got my angled pick. Let's see if we can get this out of place. Attempt to pull on it a little bit here. Now we're going to have several pieces of 10mm mounting hardware. You're going to find some mounting bolts making their way across the center of the valve cover. We're going to save those for last for the removal process, and they'll be first for the installation process. Now you can start wherever you want along the outer portion of the valve cover. Just start removing that hardware. Now it's time for the center hardware. Now we have the hardware out of position. We'll take hold of the valve cover, give it a wiggle, and lift it up and away. Keep in mind, it does have to go up and over the VVT solenoid right here. If you need to, you could gently pry. We'll just be extremely careful not to cause any damage. Now obviously this isn't a race, we don't want to cause any damage, we're taking our time. We have our wiring harness. You can maneuver this around as necessary. Typically you're going to find that the valve cover adheres to that engine. Just go ahead and gently separate it as you continue on. Before we go too far with the original valve cover, there's two rubber grommets that we have to remove. Now these are the mounts that hold the engine cover to the valve cover. So all you want to do is take hold of them and slide them out of their corresponding slots. We will be reusing these on the brand new valve cover. Prior to installing the valve cover, we need to make sure that we clean and inspect the engine. Now there's going to be a few areas that you need to pay extra special attention to. Looking along this area here, we can see our timing chain cover. In between the engine and the timing chain cover, you're going to find that you have some sealant. We can see some on the other side of the timing chain cover, right along here. Those aren't the only two areas. Stay along the back side of the engine following that camshaft, and this is where you're going to see that you have a small bump along the driver's side. Along each one of these lower corners, there also must be some adhesive. Now with that said, as we clean, we're going to make sure that we're scraping things out and away from the engine, never in towards the engine. As for the center area, I'm just using a clean rag. You shouldn't need to do much scraping here. As we clean, we're just making sure nothing fell inside the spark plug ports. Now if you do have to clean any areas on the engine, you can use a flat blade razor, whether it's metal or plastic. Whatever works best for you, just be extremely careful not to cause any damage. Now that we have the inner area cleaned, let's make our way to the outer portion. Once again, paying special attention to all those areas. We can see this, we're taking our time. This is not a rush in any way. During the wipe down process, you can use some parts cleaner, but it has to be directly on the rag. We don't want any parts cleaner going into the engine oiling system. Let's install our valve cover gasket along the bottom of the valve cover. The gasket itself is going to make its way across the center and of course along all edges. We'll rest this in position. Start pressing it in along the center first. You need to make sure it's seated so it does not fall out while you continue on with the installation. If the gasket's not seated properly, you're going to have a leak. Make our way to the outer portion next. After installing that valve cover gasket, we're back at the engine, and now it's time for our oil-resistant sealant. We're using it in all the areas that I had pointed out. Now we can install our valve cover. Start getting this in position here. Going over that VVT solenoid, and we'll rest it down. Now with that in the rested position, we're going to start in all hardware. We are not tightening anything until all pieces are properly started in by hand. Once you have them all started in, we're going to snug them up. We're starting from the center, making our way out. Once they're snug, I'm going to torque them to 89 inch-pounds, starting in the center once again. Now we have our rubber grommets, or rubber mounts. We'll just take those and slide them onto their corresponding areas on the valve cover itself. You can use a little bit of lubricant here if necessary. It's time for the ignition coils. As far as the ignition coils are concerned, I'm using a tiny bit of dielectric lubricant on the far end of the ignition coil. This is the area that's going to slide onto the spark plug. We'll make sure we have the ignition coil in the proper orientation. We want to have the electrical connector facing forward. Slide it down into this area. It should slide over the spark plug. Continue on with your 8mm headed mounting bolt. Now I'm just going to insert the rest of my ignition coils. We'll start on the mounting bolts, then we'll snug them up, and then I'm going to torque each one of these bolts to 60 inch-pounds. Let's double check to make sure each one of these is properly secured in place. Now we have our hose that goes all the way over to this area. It's going to go under these hoses and the mounting bracket. Now my clamp was damaged, so I'm replacing it. This clamp is going to go in the original position as where I had removed the original clamp. Make sure that's nice and tight. Now we've got that hose on, we'll continue on to the vent hose across the top of the valve cover. We're also going to secure this hose. We just have our small bracket mount, slide that in, listen for a click. Continuing on, we have our electrical connectors. Line those up with their corresponding ignition coils, press them in until you hear a click, a light tug confirming they're secured. We have our VVT solenoid connector here. Line that up. And now, of course, we're going to secure our wiring harness as well. After wiping and cleaning our dipstick, we can reinstall that, press it down. And now it's time for our engine cover. As we bring this into position, we're aligning it with its mounting points and we'll press it straight down. Double check all four corners to make sure it's properly secured in place. Okay friend, we finished the installation of our valve cover. At this point, it's always a good idea to complete an engine oil and filter change on your vehicle. After you've completed that, you're going to run it and make sure you have no oil leaks. Aside from that, thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.